Hey guys, welcome back. So I'm going to be doing a reaction on three videos, one by Michael Smerconish, the other by Van Jones, and then one by Don Lemon, all in reaction to Charlie Kirk's memorial. Van Jones's is more about the message he received from Charlie Kirk. I'm going to leave that for last because we want to leave on a good note. We're going to sandwich Don Lemon in the middle because he had some very frustrating things to say. And then we're going to open up with an encouraging review by CNN, which is hard to believe that it's an encouraging review, but sometimes they have good takes on certain things. Now, before we jump in, please consider liking and subscribing and sharing this video. If you enjoy what you hear, please go ahead and do so. Now, one more thing before we jump in, and I'm going to elaborate on this. Do you prefer to watch content that makes you upset and outraged, or do you want content that keeps you hopeful but lets you stay aware of what's going on out there in the world? Leave a comment and let me know what you think. Now let's jump into this video by Michael Smerconish doing a review on the Charlie Kirk Memorial, which took place yesterday.
What were the parts of the memorial service that gave you hope, Michael, at this divisive time?
I don't know that I could do it, but Erica Kirk, you know, that I wrestle as a person of faith. I wrestle with this whole idea of forgiveness. And Brianna, the lawyer in me wonders, what does that mean practically? I mean, it's not her say, but oftentimes prosecutors pay deference to victim family members. If you're forgiving the assassin, does that have any impact on pursuit of a death penalty in this case? I mean, I have questions in that regard, but I thought that she was really someone who rose to the occasion under enormous emotional stress and said a lot of very valuable things.
Yeah, I watched the event. I followed the live stream, and it was very touching how Erica was able to compose herself, and give a very level-headed message. Look, if someone murdered someone that I loved, and I had to give a message about what I thought about the person 11 days out from them murdering my loved one, it would be very hard for me to stand up there and simply say, I forgive them. But do you know what? Not everybody believed that this was a unifying or this was a godly gathering. We have Don Lemon. He did a live stream, and here's what he had to say, and I'm going to interject at various points of his own take on this memorial. Many of us in Christian circles have said that this feels like a revival, but Don Lemon has some choice words to say about this gathering. And forgive me, but I'm going to do my very best to contain myself because he's releasing spirits. You know, when you speak words, you release spirits. And that's something that I've learned over the last 47 years of my life. When the kind of words you use determines the kind of reactions you get, at the other end of the table. And Don Lemon is one of those people who wants you to believe that that the Republicans should tone down the rhetoric while he says the kind of things that you're about to hear in this video.
That's why this matters, because the moment religion becomes a tool of politics, dissent starts to sound like blasphemy. That is the point. You cannot go against me. This is blasphemous. You cannot say the truth about and use someone's own words because this is blasphemy. Now, not everyone in that arena would call themselves white nationalists. Most wouldn't. But history teaches us to listen carefully when leaders start talking about taking the country back, about restoring a covenant, about returning to some imagined moral order.
All right, so here Don Lemon, of course, this is clipped. This is a 3-minute clip in the middle of his live stream. And Don Lemon starts out by talking about how religion is is not to be used in a certain way politically. There was a chat that was on the screen earlier that I'm going to just try and skip back. I'm going to skip back to that chat. And then this person says, faith is a private matter. Yes, it is. So is your sexual orientation. So is whether you want personally to transition your body from one to another. But we're having it being shoved down people's throats, so it's no longer a private matter. So we have people who side they stay on the side that the government should legislate whether people should believe certain things or not, use certain pronouns or not. Then they turn around and then say that they want you to keep your faith private. They want to fly a certain flag in public, take down the 10 Commandments and hide Christian iconography. But they want faith to be a private matter. And that's all well and good. But when Don Lemon says that, using terms like take back America, as if there's an imagined way the United States of America was meant to be, it's not imagined. It is historical fact that the United States of America was originally settled by the Christian group known as the Puritans. The Puritans were made uncomfortable in Europe, especially in the United Kingdoms or in England, because of their religious position on the right way to worship God, the God of the Bible. And they were encouraged to move to a new continent. And of course, it was a dangerous trip. And when they arrived on the Mayflower, they dedicated the land to God and said, this is a land where we will be allowed to worship the way the Bible says we should worship. And then many hundred years later, we have people who believe the same as Don Lemon, that never happened, or even though it happened, they want to bring in the conversation around the fact that there were natives who already lived in the United States. So what they did by dedicating the United States to God was illegal. And depending on where you sit, okay, if you sit on the same side of consciousness as I do, where I believe that the Holy Bible was divinely inspired and that the God of the Bible is the creator of everything we see, and I believe that wholeheartedly. And if you come into the world with that worldview, and it is the same Bible that tells you to treat others the way you want to be treated yourself, and so it is not a tyrannical book. People may have used the Bible in tyrannical ways, but it doesn't mean that it's a tyrannical book. And on, I could go on and give you, my thoughts on this matter. But when you have Don Lemon trying to say that there's an imagined way the United States was originally meant to be, it is well documented that the Puritans wanted the United States to be a country dedicated to God and built on Christian principles. And you know what? For a long time, that was the case. Now, what Don Lemon is trying to paint here is that the revival or the memorial service for Charlie Kirk, which held yesterday, is somehow a dog whistle to white supremacists. And if I believe that they are right in saying it's time to take back a country that was originally dedicated to God, for it to return to its Christian roots, I don't think that's a problem, because it is those Christian roots that created the country that you live in today. You're going to hear a couple of things that he has to say. And I'm going to point out the fallacy of his position. He has a very passionate way of putting his point across. And I want to say that already the fact that he's immediately connecting the outward expression of a multicultural crowd. The stadium was filled with not just white people, but Black, Hispanic, Chinese, Asian. Indian, the crowd was mixed. He instantly breaks it down to a white supremacist convention. And then he makes the excuse to say not everyone in the crowd is a white supremacist. He said that already. I'm going to skip back just a little, and then I'm going to keep playing.
A covenant about returning to some imagined moral order. I'm going to show you the proof, but I'm going to have my piece first.
He looks very angry.
Because this is not a new story, but just on this level. This is a new level of the same story, because this story has been told before. An America ordained by God, a people under siege, a hero struck down by outsiders.
Okay, so an America under God is the way the United States of America was founded. It is. It's historical fact. So there's nothing wrong to restate that, to go back to the roots of your country. A people under siege. Conservatives have been attacked, sued, maligned for the better part of the last 15 years, almost 20 years. And to speak as if none of those things ever happened is simply being dishonest, because we all watched all of it play out. The Christian couple who were sued out of business because they refused to make a wedding cake for a gay couple. Every business has the right to refuse to do business with people. But in this case, under President Barack Obama, this couple lost their business. Now, I stand corrected if this didn't happen under Barack Obama, but if memory serves me well, it happened under those circumstances under his presidency. Let's keep listening.
In this particular world, we're not all one human altogether. The person who doesn't carry your ideology or belief is made to be an outsider.
That is what the left has done. There's a caricature of Christianity that Don Lemon and people, in the mainstream media and in Hollywood have sold. And sadly, it's been believed. You don't meet people like me on the streets saying things like that, but you get to see people in Hollywood act out a caricature that tells you that that's the way it is. I just had a meeting with a friend, and one of the things that I told him was he's white, and we were having a conversation, and he said that when he entered a predominantly black space, there were people that looked at him like he didn't belong there. And I said to him, I don't understand it when that happens, because my experience is very different. My experience has been that my family has been shown, and I'm not saying me and my kids and my wife, I'm talking about from my grandfather. My grandfather was a Christian evangelist in Africa. And when he wrote to a white church organization in Springfield, Missouri, called the Assemblies of God Church, a group of white people who didn't know my grandfather showed him kindness. They sent him resources. They sent him help. And eventually they sent him ministers to come over to Nigeria to train people and to disciple people and to help that young movement grow. All I've known about white people is kindness and grace. But I do know that there are people whose worldview has been shaped by the fact that, white people are horrible, white people, were slavers, white people, are really mean, evil people. And that's really the worldview that has been pushed by mainstream media, by Hollywood, by influencers like Don Lemon, because they want you to believe a certain way. If a white person dies, it doesn't matter. If a black person dies, say their name. But under Christianity, everyone is equal under God. Of course, I think he's mentioned it already. He said something about segregation and Jim Crow. But what they fail to tell you is that segregation and Jim Crow were instituted by Democrats. They don't tell you that. The Democrats instituted it. They held on for dear life to segregation until they couldn't, and then they had to put on a new mask. They set aside the KKK hood and then they put on a new mask, trying to be the friend of the minority groups. But these were the people who didn't want to let go of slavery. These were the people who didn't want to allow blacks and minorities to vote. These are the people who didn't want blacks in white spaces, the Democrats. It's history. I'm not, if you think I'm lying, then crack open a history book. Go down a rabbit hole. All right. There are channels on YouTube that will give you all the information you want. But look, YouTube is nice as a search engine, but I think that you should look for your content in more orthodox ways. Go to a library, crack open a book, and read the history of movements like the KKK and segregation, and you see the fingerprints of Democrats all over it. So when the feigned outrage that you see from talking heads like Don Lemon, shows up in your feed, don't buy it. Just do your homework. It's really as simple as that.
That story built Jim Crow. It baptized segregation.
No, that was the KKK that was validated by the Democrat Party. We need to call these lies out. Having the look of outrage. Of course, you can see he's reading a script. So I don't have a script in front of me. I don't. I wish I could show you my desk. I don't have a script. These are things that you learn and you understand. And when someone is trying to rile you up by rattling a bunch of made-up facts, calling them facts is even incorrect. So made-up talking points. It's important that you know your history. This is very important. Now, I'm going to let him keep talking, but I want you to let me know in the comments section, all right? What do you think should happen to influencers, talking heads, politicians who knowingly lie about history? I would believe that if you were to visit an establishment and the job of that establishment was to, let's say, protect your home from pests, but they kept failing at protecting your home from pests, would you continue or should you continue to patronize that establishment? It's a question. When you listen to personalities who are supposed to give you the facts and tell you the truth, but they constantly misinform you, they lie about history, they lie about the intent of the Constitution, and so on, and they keep going. Should you continue believing those people? Should you continue paying attention to them? It's a question that I would like you to answer in the comment section.
It told generations of Black Americans that freedom, faith, and democracy belong to someone else first. And in order to have yours, you got to humble yourself. You got to pray. You've got to follow orders. You have to go along with the man and the system. Don't move too fast. Don't offend. Don't be too black.
All right. So to you, if you're listening to this and you're a Black person in the United States, I have Black people in my audience who are subscribed to my channel. And by the way, please subscribe to the channel if you're following my content and you like the way this is going. I lived in Africa and I never heard a thing preached from the pulpit that insinuated that the white person was destined to be above me. No. But do you know who kept saying that was what the white person wanted? It was the civil rights leaders. Every time you listen to civil rights leaders and the movies made about the civil rights, that was a narrative that was always being pushed. And whenever you listen to people who spout the teachings and the tenets of the KKK, that's what the KKK talked about all the time. So Don Lemon is conflating the teachings that come from the church and the Bible with what the KKK, sponsored by the Democrat Party, by the way, used to say. So it's essential that we separate, what Don Lemon is trying to feed you is stones. The grain is where the truth is. So let's look for the grain. And he doesn't seem to have any. He's just outraged that the movement that has kicked off is terrifying the left. You had 100,000 200,000 people show up in the stadium. Outside of the stadium, it's estimated that there were upwards of 150 and 200,000 outside in the overflow provision for Charlie Kirk's memorial. And you had an orderly memorial. There was no call for violence. You see, when they don't have any clip that they can clip out of context, and maybe he did, maybe he clipped something out of context and he's trying to sell it as, you see, I'm telling you the truth. Listen to me, believe me. We've seen all the clips that they've shared about Charlie Kirk out of context. We're not buying it anymore. Don Lemon, he has put on his makeup, his outrage face. Don Lemon couldn't withstand a simple conversation with Piers Morgan, but when he's doing his monologue to his audience, and his audience love it. His audience love it. Look, there's something that I read in the Bible, and the Bible always, it says that that those who are of the darkness, Jesus was speaking. He said that if I spoke to you words that were consistent with the darkness in you, you would accept me, you would embrace me. But I have spoken to you words that don't align with darkness. I've spoken to you the words of my Father, and that's why you want to kill me. He was talking to the Pharisees. And many times when, you have people who speak the right words, who speak the words of God, the people who don't like that will be outraged, and they'll twist those words to mean something else. All right. I promise next time. Okay. I don't know if I can promise this, but I would like to be able to, have the scripture I'm quoting on the screen. Okay. I better just do that now. All right. I'm just going to give you the Bible verse. It is John chapter 8, verse 40. And here's Jesus speaking. I'm going to read it from the New International Version. As it is, you are looking for a way to kill me, a man who has told you the truth that I heard from God. Abraham did not do such things. All right, so please ignore the first part because that's insinuated. I know that there's a portion of scripture where that was said by Jesus, but I just wanted to give you this focus point that people, when they hear the truth, they don't like it because it doesn't match the thing that they want. Many people in the Black community, have been outraged because of the things that Charlie Kirk said, not because that they couldn't find them in the scripture, but that Charlie Kirk didn't take the path that most people who have taken to substituting what the Bible says and putting their own brand on it instead of what God actually says about things. And so they call it hate speech. So people, when they don't like what you're saying, which is true, they turn around and try to call it hate speech.
It always starts the same way, an appeal to God. It ends the same way too, with power protecting itself at all costs. I don't think you guys heard me, because when I am either on my knees or in my sacred place, even when I am walking down the street, or if I'm in a taxi, if I'm on an airplane, whatever, I am praying and making an appeal to my God that you don't know about. And you don't need to know, because it's my relationship with him. But this whole thing that's happening now, it always starts the same way. An appeal to God, somewhat publicly, performative faith, like we have performative patriotism. It ends the same way too, with power protecting itself at all costs.
All right. So that's Don Lemon, in essence, joining in with everyone else. First of all, they smeared Charlie Kirk's name. They lied about his words, and they've repeatedly tried to make it seem like the thing going on in our world today after the death of Charlie Kirk is nothing. It's not important. Then they see over 300,000 people attending his memorial, and then it's become a white nationalist convention. It's laughable. Just watching them, it's so predictable. It's laughable, but that's what they do. My wife doesn't like me using the they, them phrase, but sadly, the world is divided. The world is divided. There are distinctions in the world. And many distinctions in the world are made because people have themselves made choices. They've chosen to believe certain things. They've chosen to push certain things. It's hard to believe that someone like Don Lemon believes that he is on the right side, where he decides that a gathering that has convened to mourn someone who preached and espoused Christian values is somehow a white nationalist-led convention, and that everybody else there who is of color or minority is being deceived. They don't know that they are in a white nationalist convention, but they really are. And, you know, people like Don Lemon, who continue to say that the White House is divisive and it is it's sowing chaos, will be the first to use divisive language when something that's meant to be bringing people together to mourn a good man is suddenly being used in a divisive way by saying that these people are trying to take back America, and in his own interpretation, which he's trying to share to his audience, make it more racist. All right, so we're going to end with Van Jones. Van Jones received a text message from Charlie. Van Jones received a text message from Charlie Kirk. He didn't read it until after he found out that Charlie had passed. And he did this video, and I think it's a good way to close this episode, because Don Lemon has basically spent an entire live stream sowing misinformation and division and essentially hate among his own audience. How can a man who sows division and hate and misinformation have an audience? Because there are people who believe it. And all they have to do is crack open a book. Well, many of them will not crack open a book. Just like many people who believe the lies about Charlie Kirk won't even do a simple search to find out if the things they've heard about Charlie Kirk were actually true. All it takes is to do a search. What did Charlie Kirk say about race? And then you'll find videos all over the place with full debates where he expresses what he thinks about race. What does he think about black people? And you would find out what he had to say about black people. But a lot of content is filtered through voices that essentially are there to tell you how to think. And that's not a good thing, because if you spend your life being told how to think, it's not safe for you. It's not safe for your kids. You need to know exactly what's going on. And what I would say is this. At the end of this video, anything that I've said, I need you to go out there and do your own research. Open a book, read, find out if the things that I've said are true, how accurate they are. And then if you want to have a debate based on a robust body of information, not what somebody else on a different YouTube channel said. That's all I'm going to say about that. So let's listen to Van Jones as he tells us his story.
Hey guys, I've decided I'm going to do something. I'm going to share something personal that I wasn't sure I was going to but I think it's important. Charlie Kirk and I were not friends at all. In fact, the last week of his life, we were beefing hard. Beefing online, beefing on air. But the day before he died, he did something that shocked me. He sent me a personal message, calling for personal dialogue, wanted me to come on his show. He said we could be gentlemen together. He said we could deal with our disagreements agreeably. And in the past week and a half, just watching people talk about civil wars and censorship and all this stuff coming out of his death, I just thought it was important to let people know, don't put that on Charlie Kirk. Because the last day of his life, he was reaching out to have not more censorship, more conversation, more dialogue with somebody who honestly was one of his adversaries, me. And I just want to share that with the world. And I hope that maybe it might help somebody on both sides deal with issues more like he did.
This is very big for Van Jones, and I respect it. this is the kind of conversation that we should be having. Look, I don't think that at the end of every conversation or debate, the two people will shake hands and say, oh, finally, I changed your mind. Yes, you changed my mind. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes it does. But what I would hope is that there will be good faith conversations coming from both parties. And that even if the disagreement stands, people don't resort to calling the other person a dehumanizing name, labeling them in a certain way, and giving their supporters permission to do harm to their opponent. That's what calling people these names does. Now, of course, they would say, well, Trump did it, but I would say, well, is he right to do so? I would say, no, he's not right to do so. But he only started doing that once the media began to smear him unfairly, call him out and call him names, label his family. And Donald Trump, being a fighter and a New Yorker, punched back. And he's been punching back ever since. Does that excuse his behavior? No. But should he put his hands down or his arms down and not protect himself or defend himself? That wouldn't be a good thing for me to suggest. What I would say is all of us just need to take a lead from Charlie. Charlie was a person who spoke with his opponents, tried to reason with them. And even when they would devolve into name calling and trying to make him sound subhuman, he took it with grace, he smiled, and then he focused on the debate. Now he's dead, and everyone is calling him, all sorts of names. He's not here to defend himself. But we can learn from the way he lived, the way he handled his critics, and we can honestly learn from him. Now, in the end, what are we going to do? Are we going to roll over and play dead? I don't think so. And that's what terrifies people like Don Lemon. Don Lemon is terrified at what they are seeing happening all over the United States. They are seeing young people turning to God. They are seeing young people, in essence, turning to the Conservative Party, the Republican Party, and they are seeing a groundswell that has the potential of removing the Democrat Party, or let me say, keeping them as the minority political party. Is that how they call it, minority? Or the opposition, keeping them as the opposition for the next 20 years. Why 20 years? Because we have people who were 18 years old, and we have people who were 18 and 20 who saw Charlie Kirk as a role model. And many of them are going to start voting in a few years. Some of them are already, qualified to vote. And there's something that's going to start happening. Most of them are going to be voting conservative. And for the next 20 years, there's going to be this intense pressure at the polls to continue to keep conservative voices in power and to keep those who aren't conservative out of power. There's going to be an uproar that this has, the Christian conservatives have taken over. Well, if Charlie Kirk had been allowed to continue having conversations, and if the left literally, or not literally, I shouldn't be using that word loosely, if the left had a logical defense for their policies, and they could defend them in the arena, in the marketplace of ideas, then there'll be a chance for a back and forth. And that was what went on in the 60s, 70s, and the 80s, and probably the 90s. But after the 90s, and we entered into the 2000s, we got into this phase where these ideas began to thin out, and it's gotten worse over time, so that the left literally do not have legs to stand on when it comes to their policies. All they can do is smear, lie, accuse, and then try to make it look like the other party is made up of really bad people and is no longer about the ideas. And when conversations devolve to the point of calling other people bad people, then things seriously, need to be looked at, because now you're not dealing with ideas, you're dealing with conflict. And that's really part of what people are saying right now, that there is no redeeming the other party and that the only other thing to do is civil war. And I don't agree with that. But to be honest, when instead of having a conversation, people pick up guns and start shooting at the people that they can't defeat in the marketplace of ideas, it wasn't the Conservative Party that fired the first shot. It was the other side that fired the first shot. This has been a long one. Let me know what you think of my review of these 3 videos and these 3 approaches to what happened to Charlie Kirk and the memorial. I will do my best to read your comments and to respond to the comments in a different video. But what I would like for you to do is to consider all of the ideas that are being shared in this video and let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Now, if you've watched this long, you're definitely a super fan. So let me know if you want to. Now, if you've watched this long, you're definitely a super fan. Please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing this video. Also, consider sending a super thank to donate to this video to keep the channel going. If you want to connect with us deeper, please consider becoming a member of the channel. The link to join the membership is in the description of this video and in the pinned chat. Please consider doing that because it helps us stay independent. All of the perks and all of the privileges that you get access to will be available on the page when you click the link. And thank you for watching this video this long. Until next time, God bless you, and I'll see you on the next one.